Welcome to the Luna Holistic Podcast. I'm your host, Geneva Robbins, and every month on this podcast, we'll talk about Reiki, as well as answering your questions on all things spiritual. We are gratefully located in Calgary in Treaty 7 territory. Thank you all and welcome to the show. Hello and welcome to the Luna Holistic Podcast. My name's Geneva Robbins, and today I've got Angela Hogeveen with me. Say hi, Angela.
Hi, Geneva.
Good to have you here. Today we're going to be talking about, do affirmations work? Which is something that we work with all the time as part of our self-care practice and combining it with Reiki and all that good stuff. And before we jump into that, we'll start with our collective breath of gratitude, just a little mini meditation. So as long as you're not driving, I invite you to close your eyes and just take a big, settled sigh of relief. And just letting all of the energy connect in with the energy of the earth, noticing that presence deep in the earth below your feet, and just sending a beam of gratitude down to the earth and all of nature. Feeling that energy spread out all around you, maybe even from horizon to horizon, with deep reverence and gratitude for the natural world where you are sitting right now. Just take another big sigh of relief, letting everything that might be heavy spread out into that support with a deep sense of gratitude, and allow that gratitude to flow back to you. Noticing all of the plants and animals, the fresh air, the wind, the sky. Getting a sense of where all of the water is around you, lakes and rivers and reservoirs and the ocean. Feeling that interconnectedness. And noticing the gratitude in your own heart for you. And just let that gratitude expand until it's filling your whole bubble. Your whole aura is just complete with that gratitude feeling. And then when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. Here we go. Thank you. Thank you, Angela. How'd that go for you?
Lovely, lovely. Even, short little minute, 2 minutes of that, of being mindful is just always nice.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Just settles everything in. That's awesome.
Yep.
We might as well just jump right into affirmations. Hey, Angela, do affirmations work?
Yes, they do, Geneva. They absolutely work.
And how do you know that?
I try to use them as much as I can. Well, I've had one really big experience with affirmations was when something external happened that really just sort of changed everything for me. It was totally out of my control, and it just, sent me into this downward spiral of just sadness and a lot of fear and what am I going to do? And then I did an affirmation, one of our friend Louise Hay's affirmation, but I did it for honestly, I think like 3 days straight. That's
Mm.
all I did was that affirmation over and over and over and over again while I was crying and feeling terrible, but trying to convince myself that it was going to be okay. And
Mhm.
then finally, as they say, I think it was on that third day where I really felt a shift. And I'm like, oh, I actually now do believe what I'm saying to myself. I do believe this affirmation. And I do believe
Mhm.
that things are okay. And then, yeah, I was able to move forward, not be in that mindset of fear. And it changed everything. It literally
Wow.
changed everything for me.
Hmm. So when you were repeating it, was it just like in your silently to yourself, or were you saying it out loud? Like, how were you using it? Did you do?
It was both. It was both. When I
Mhm.
was at work, it was in my head. And then when I was home doing whatever I was doing, cleaning, laundry, I was saying it out loud. And as they say, it was
Mm.
on repeat over and over and over again. And I'll share what it was. It's, I
Oh,
believe,
good,
one of
because I was
her,
going to be nosy.
yeah, I believe it's one of her sort of main affirmations, which is all is well in my world. Everything is working out for my highest good. Out of this situation, only good will come. I am safe.
Ooh, I got chills when you said it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. It's big. It's like all encompassing.
Hmm. Yeah. That's powerful. That's powerful. And it's fascinating too, because it if you only repeat an affirmation once, then mm, do affirmations work? Not as much. It's sort of like doing reps at a gym. If you only lift a barbell one time, you're not going to expect great biceps. But if you do sets of them and you practice and you do some every day, then you're going to be ripped in no time. And that's sort of the same thing here, is
Mhm.
that we're practicing that inner mental strength. And part of it is, it helps you switch your focus, because the main thing is it's counteracting all of the negative thoughts. And the negative thoughts are just on a for many people, it's just a constant stream of
Mhm.
of worry and fear and shame and all kinds of things. And if left unchecked, that part of us will just dominate, because it's sort of like it can build so much momentum. It can get fueled by external people and things on the disastrous things we see when we flick on our phones. It's like, see, you aren't worthy, you aren't good enough, you are not
Mhm.
as good as this other person, and disaster is around every single corner. So there's lots of things that are fueling that negative thinking or that negative bias. And some people say that we have that negative bias for pure survival reasons, right? Like if we get hyper vigilant about the one thing that's going wrong, perhaps that trait made us more, able to escape danger or make a plan for safety, that sort of thing. So we sort of worry about the small things, the little negative things, or the big negative things, and we, with an attempt to try to worry them away, or that if we think enough about it, then we can somehow solve it. But I find the solution to that wave of negative thinking is, partly like disrupting it, like doing things that are going to pull you away from it, or counteracting it with what you want to be part of your inner mental landscape, which is sort of this affirmation practice. And we should probably back up for anybody who's not familiar with what an affirmation is. Welcome. It's totally cool. I'm glad you're here. And there's probably lots of definitions, but basically it's just a simple positive statement or even a visualization that makes you feel like everything can be okay. And And there's lots of different combinations of affirmations that all bring sort of this peaceful, healing, centered, calm, loving feeling into your experience. And we practice with them because the negative thoughts are strong and they're automatic. And so when we practice saying them over and over again, what we're doing is we're strengthening those pathways basically in our brain so that that positive thinking becomes the first thought, not the no, not thought at all. So how does that sit with you? Or how does that resonate with you? Like the practicing of it is what makes the affirmations work.
100%. I mean, at the beginning, I was almost fighting with myself, saying this affirmation in particular, the one that I shared,
Mm-hmm.
and part of my brain saying, no, you're lying. That's not true. No, this is BS. There was a lot of resistance to it. But the way that I got around that resistance was just, as I say, over and over, hundreds, if not thousands of times on repeat, over and over and over and over again. And yeah, as I say, it took a long time. It took days for me to finally believe it.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel it absolutely can, yeah, help you to move past the fear mongering in our brain.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, yeah. Do you have any experiences with affirmations?
Yes, many. I think affirmations probably have saved my life more than anything else. For anybody who isn't familiar with Louise Hay, we'll put a link in the description for the best book that is fantastic, which is You Can Heal Your Life, which is where she basically walks you through the whole affirmation process and talking about affirmations for each sort of sector of your life. So there's ones for work, there's ones for relationships, abundance, health and well being, all kinds of things. And that particular book is about connecting sort of that mind body piece that if we think in a particular pattern, then we get patterns in our physical body. And this is all from what she just sort of studied and brought this, book forward and created a list of sort of physical conditions and the negative thoughts that might contribute to them or make them worse. And then the positive thoughts that are like the antidote to the negative thinking. But even before I found that book, I sort of rage journaling in my 20s about how well, terrible my life was. And then I just got tired of my complaining. And then I just sort of, I don't want this. I want this. I don't want that. I want this. And sort of demanding it. Like I'm fed up with life not being the way I want it to be. And this is the way I want it to be. So without even knowing it, I had stumbled into it. That process of rage journaling and then rage positivity was was sort of the first step for me, which I think is a really big thing of like, there's a moment in your life where you're like, I don't want to be here anymore and I want something better. And affirmations are a way of practicing the something better. So that started the whole process. And then I found Louise Hay's book and I started practicing with it. I grew up with asthma and allergies, and I was sort of fed up with that. I didn't want to not be able to breathe anymore. Funny that. And the medications I was taking weren't really doing anything for it. I would still have really severe symptoms with even a few minutes of exposure to a dog or a cat. And it would last for weeks and it was miserable because I love cats and dogs. And so I was just searching for anything that would help me. And Louise Hay had an affirmation for asthma. And so I just started practicing it. I started playing around with different combinations and combining it with Reiki. And over time, my symptoms have almost completely reversed, which is phenomenal. It probably took a good 10, 12 years of practice. So it it can take a while if it's a long-standing pattern. But one of the other things was I get migraines from time to time, especially with the weather changes where we live. There's big, drastic pressure changes that just can do in my poor little brain and send me to bed and with darkness and all of that. And I was in Starbucks one day and, probably one of these pressure waves hit. And I just could feel myself getting the worst migraine ever in the middle of Starbucks. And I was like, how am I going to drive home? I have to pick up my kid from school. Like, and I had no pain medication on me, but I also felt like I couldn't even get up. Like if I moved from the table, it would just be unbearable. So I just put my head in my hands and I started practicing affirmations and also giving my poor little brain Reiki. And for me, the whole thing with migraines and headaches is all about pressure. So I tend to use affirmations that are about counteracting that pressure. So it's like usually the thought pattern that is connected to it for me is like, I'll try to do 10 hours of work in 1 hour. And then my brain is like, no, that's impossible. And the pressure of that, and I have to get it done perfectly to meet somebody's expectation or they'll be mad at me, right? Like that's the whole pressured thoughts. And so the affirmation is that I use is like, there's a million ways of this to get done, and none of them need to involve me. And I'll think about like, it's okay, like things will get done in their own time. It's okay to be me. I can be here. I can just show up and breathe, and it's enough. Like, I really gentle, and I'll sort of do varieties on a theme. And when I'm in a high pain state, it's almost like I'm feeling around for the thought that gives me the greatest relief, which I
Mhm.
can feel almost instantaneously. So I'll think a thought and the pain will drop. So I was like, oh, there I'm onto it. You know, the classic one is I love and approve of myself. So you can practice with that, or all is well, you know, I feel ease and flow, or anything like that you can kind of experiment. So you can look up an affirmation. I've written a whole book of the secret called The Secret Art of Happiness. I've created affirmation ladders for each of the Reiki ideals. So helping you kind of go from one end of the spectrum for feeling like anger, to go from a rage to a peace, and there's an affirmation that helps you every step of the way. So you don't have to be feeling peaceful. You can feel angry and practice an affirmation that matches where you are, but creates a little bit of space or room around it. So there's many, many, many that you can use. For me, I found so while I was like practicing these affirmations in the middle of Starbucks, my migraine completely stopped and I didn't even need medication after that. I was able to drive home. It completely went away, but I did have to keep up the thinking pattern that created the ease. And I had to really commit to thinking in that positive way, because as soon as I start thinking any of the pressured thoughts, the pain would come back double. So in some ways, I had this like physical experience. Practicing affirmations stopped that migraine in its tracks, which to me was not ever my experience. And it was such a powerful and profound experience. It was the thing that completely convinced me that affirmations can really work for a lot of things. It does take practice. And the reason I was able to reach for a positive thought right in that moment, even being in a high pain state, is because I had been practicing them beforehand when it wasn't acute, so that you can bring it in to your practice. So that was it for me. So it was
That's
powerful.
powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And, affirmations, I think we all do affirmations all day long. Not that they're necessarily positive, but, so many times I hear people saying, oh, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke. And that's an affirmation. Last weekend, I went for a little hike with a friend, and part of it was quite deep, kind of wet snow. So it was hard to trek through. And she tweaked something in her back. So her back was quite sore.
Mm.
She kept saying, "Oh, my back's so sore," and I said, "No, it's not. It's not sore." And she didn't really buy into that, but she kept reaffirming, "My back's sore." She would get out of the car, "My back's sore," and words are powerful, whether it's a
Mhm.
positive or a negative. Just like you said with your migraine, I fully
Mhm.
believe that whenever I physically start to feel something, I try to immediately go to the opposite is I feel
Mhm.
great. I feel energized. I feel strong,
Mhm.
whatever it is. And yeah, I totally buy into that we can change how our body feels with our thoughts.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing to me how it does work. And what's kind of fascinating is there's a medical researcher called Candace Pert, and she was part of the team that discovered the endorphin receptor in the 70s. And so before they discovered this endorphin receptor, they knew that, things like morphine and opioids had an effect on us, but they didn't know why. They didn't know where it was attaching. And it turns out we have a little receptor on the surface of our cells that catches opioids, you know, and that's what creates the effect inside the cells and creates the effect in our brains and our bodies and everything like that. And the cool thing is, they said, well, if we have these receptors, like evolution is thrifty. So there must be a reason we have them. There must be a natural endorphin opioid in our body. So then they went looking for it, and lo and behold, they found it. So that's our kind of like pleasure feeling chemical. But when they started looking for more of these kinds of receptors, they're into the hundreds. Last I checked, probably even more. They're finding them all of the time. They used to call them neuropeptides because they were looking for them in our brain. But when they started looking at other cells, they're on every cell in our body. And our immune system has the most receptors to these sort of information chemicals. So basically, what the current thoughts are is that these peptides or these information chemicals get released with different thoughts or different experiences. So there's this idea of like that every emotion we have has an actual information chemical. It's got these little chemicals that wander through our bodies and tell the rest of our body what we're thinking and we're feeling, which I think is just fascinating. Candace Pert said that our bodies are more like a flickering flame than a hunk of meat. So that if you think of like with every thought you think, with every feeling you have, it actually is chemical. Like it's a something that is released throughout your whole body. It informs your immune system and every other cell in your body what the state of the world is. And so that your body then can respond to stress signals and danger and all that sort of stuff, which is great if it's actual danger. But if you're not in actual danger, if you're just thinking about disaster, the rest of your body doesn't know that disaster isn't imminent, but it's trusting those thoughts. It's trusting those little information chemicals. So it's like disaster's around the corner. All right, let's release all the cortisol. Let's pump up everything. Let's turn the digestion off. Let's not worry about repairing any cells or healing any damage to the body because, death is imminent. But it doesn't know that it's just like, oh, it's just tax season and you're a little bit worried about paying, whatever it is. Like it doesn't understand, your body is just following orders. It's like a good little trooper. And so one of the ideas behind why affirmations work is using the system. So when you think positively, you get a whole bunch of positive chemicals that put your body in a state of rest. And when our bodies are in a state of rest, then our immune system goes back to the work of healing, you know, and this cascade of chemical responses happen throughout your whole body. And so practicing these affirmations and even sort of doing a little bit of play acting with them, even if they don't feel like truth right now, if you could imagine one day, how would that feel if you truly loved yourself? What would that feel like? What does a person who loves themselves unconditionally and honestly, how does that person hold their body? How does that person breathe? What choices would you make if that was true for you? And then you imagine it. And just in that state of imagining it, it's going to start bringing in those feelings into your body, which I think over time creates sort of a set pattern that you're going to go back to. It's going to start feeling more and more familiar. And it's also okay to acknowledge the pain. I think it's important to take a moment and say, oh, this is how I'm feeling, honor it, and then say, and this is how I would like to feel. So, honoring how you're feeling with compassion. It's okay that you feel sad, mad, angry, upset, critical. It's okay. You know, just acknowledge it with gentleness and then turn to what do you want? How do you want to feel? And then you can start bringing in that practicing that thought and then just run it like a little experiment. That's the coolest thing is you do not have to take our word for it. You run it as just practice with them. You can look in a mirror, you can look in your eyes and repeat them, you can doodle them. If you know Reiki, you can use the affirmation as your intention for your practice. You can also bring it into a meditation. We've got some meditations on our website. There's a Reiki Ideal affirmation meditation, which is basically just go into guided into a meditation, and then it's just affirmations sort of washing over your nervous system, which is a little bit of a passive way. There's lots of really great songs and music that the words are positive, and that's one thing that I find is I'm so sensitive to what I hear and everything. I have to be really cautious about what I'm consuming. So if I'm listening to a lot of sad songs, then the temperature of my life is pretty sad. Oh, and I will change my state by picking positive, uplifting, cheerful songs, ones that are how I want to feel and how the vibration I want to be in. So, music and lyrics together can create profound healing. So, yeah, how does that sit with you, Angela?
Yeah, that's fascinating. I have heard before that your body doesn't know what's true. There is a fine line between when you're not feeling good to just immediately do affirmations, and so when you're not feeling good, if you're sad or upset, to feel your feelings and then turn to affirmations. Like, I think,
Mhm.
it is absolutely important to, yeah, still feel those negative feelings, maybe put a time limit on it, and then do the affirmations. I think, I think you can, if you're feeling really bad, still do a positive affirmations. I think it's a lot more, what my experience is that maybe it's a lot more work to feel good because
Mhm.
just physically those feelings are there, those negative feelings.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think
Yeah.
it is definitely important to still feel what you feel. But
Mhm.
then the next step after that is, to start with the positive affirmations.
Yeah. Yeah. Because sometimes if you leap immediately to the positive, it can be a little bit of like you're just pushing down the feeling rather than letting it transform. A really fantastic affirmation to start with is I'm willing to change. I just coughed a little while ago. We edited it out, but it's really funny because that is the first place to start. That's sometimes the hardest place to start. Nothing's going to work for you if, like, I don't think anything can work for you if you're not willing to change. Like, even traditional forms of healing and therapy and medication and all of that, if you aren't invested in your own well being, you get less out of whatever treatment it is. So, one of the first ones to practice with is I'm willing to change and just sort of experiment with that. So, it's okay to be where you are. There's no shame at all in feeling low. Of anybody else who experienced what you've experienced would feel the same way or worse. So it's okay. So just create a little bit of space around all of that feeling, acknowledge it, let it out. That's one thing that Louise Hay has lots of processes for like letting out the anger, like making a safe space for that feeling to be there and to be okay and then move through it. So if you find that it's stuck, if you're just, I don't really want to use the word wallowing, but I can't think of anything better in the moment. But if
Mm.
you're if
Mhm.
you're looping or if there's sort of this negative spiral and you really can't seem to get traction, it's because our thinking is sort of holding us in the same place instead of moving us forward. If you've gone past sort of the initial shock of the experience, you've made space for all of the feelings, and now you want to start like moving out and moving towards something positive. Affirmations and an affirmation practice can really help. Another thing that I recommend is EFT or tapping. The tapping solution as is an app, and it's really, really great because it guides you through like all of the points to tap on. And what's cool there is you start out with what is true for you. So you actually start with the negative statements and you tap on where you are right today, feeling terrible. The world's, everything is crumbled and you feel really terribly about yourself. And then you start moving through. So you say, I feel really terrible about myself as you're tapping, but I'm still a good person. Right. So you kind of add that little shame breaking things like I can feel bad and still be good. That my how I'm feeling and thinking isn't a reflection on me or my character. Even if I'm thinking poorly about my character, who I truly am is good. And then you work your way to the positive affirmation and intention. And so that's really powerful. And then the other thing is Reiki is really great to combine with affirmations. So, and the reason that it works so very well is that Reiki sort of helps you access your subconscious mind. So, the part of us that is just the autopilot, so the thoughts that just pop into your head without, it's like, I don't want to think that way about myself. They just keeps on popping up without almost automatically. Reiki can help get you into that sort of spacious awareness and connect you deeply to that landscape of your subconscious. And you can use affirmations, or you can even ask your practitioner, like when I'm receiving a Reiki session, can you just repeat this affirmation while I'm in? And it can be really, really powerful. It's something that I do in my practice with we do here at Luna Holistic. That's what we do is we'll help guide people to their positive intention, which is basically an affirmation of the positive. How do you feel? That's okay. How do you want to feel? And then we take how you want to feel or that positive energy and use that as the guide and basically can help harmonize you with the frequency of that positivity. So it gives your affirmations practice a huge boost so that you can, it's like it helps send the message to all of your cells, so that if you're working on it on a mental level, it's like your body might be lingering in the old pattern and that old soup of all those information chemicals from years past. And so Reiki can kind of help get the signal to all of your cells and all of your energy so that you're harmonized, so that you can stay in and hold that positive vibration and positive thinking a lot longer. So
I have a lot of clients who, while they're receiving Reiki, will absolutely say affirmations, like you said, whatever their intention is. If the
mm,
intention, say, is to feel light and peaceful and grounded, or whatever it may be, that's what they will say as an affirmation during their session. And
mm,
yeah, I think it's very powerful because they're saying those words in their head, and then us as the practitioner, we are seeing them that way. So maybe not an affirmation, a verbal affirmation, but kind of maybe along the same lines because, well, that's what I do visually. That's how I see them. I see them as grounded and I see them as light. So I think the combination is all very powerful.
mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. That's awesome. I love it. It does. It's so cool how it all works. So our quick long answer to do affirmations work is an unequivocal yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
they absolutely do work. Give them time, give them practice, boost them up with mirror work, maybe doodling them, getting some Reiki, maybe trying out tapping. And if you dedicate yourself to it, it does absolutely change the way you think. And that is a relief because our minds can really hold us in some pretty painful
Hmm.
spaces. And so work doing the work to counteract that and put as much energy into the positive, even if you just did equal, it will get you somewhere, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
And if I can add also gratitude, if you can
Yeah.
wrap gratitude around your affirmation, my experiences is that things change, everything changes.
Mm.
I had an experience a few years ago where a friend of mine worked for an airline. So I had buddy passes, and a buddy pass is great. It's very inexpensive, but you're flying standby. You can only get on the flight if there's an empty seat. So I went down to visit my aunt and uncle in Florida, and I was flying back home, but it was the end of spring break. So it was, yeah, in Florida. So it was, you know, all flights were booked. So when I got to the airport, they actually laughed at me and said, so this was a Friday morning, I believe. And they said, be prepared to be here all weekend. Like every flight is booked until I think Monday.
Mm.
And for whatever reason, I just said, no, no, I'm going to get on this flight. And I sat there at the gate I was just in deep gratitude. I literally had a smile on my face. And my affirmation just was, thank you, thank you, thank you for getting me on this flight. Thank you for getting me on this flight over and over again the entire time. And the flight was boarding, and the gate called me and they said, you're not going to believe this, but you have a seat. Um,
You're
which was
like,
great
I
for me.
do believe it.
You know, for me, that situation, the key was not trying to figure out how it would work because my
Mm.
brain, I couldn't come up with that answer. What happened was, and the woman was standing right beside me when they called me up, she somehow lost her passport in the airport. So couldn't fly from
Oh.
the States to Canada. And so I got her seat, which she
Whoa.
wasn't happy about, but I was so grateful. And it wasn't even a surprise to me because I was in that energy of being grateful and just the feeling like just that knowing that, no, I am going to get on this flight. And I was calm. I didn't let the fear monster in. And
Mm.
yeah, that was a very profound experience and very, yeah, confirming that this stuff works.
I love it. I love it. We'll have to do another podcast around how your thoughts manifest flights in
Yeah.
impossible situations because that's pretty cool. I love that.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah, it's kind of cool how, yeah, and I think it's because the universe is made up of gratitude. So,
Mm,
and that's the organizing principle behind all, as my thoughts of the organizing principle of how all of the atoms are coalesced into molecules is gratitude. They like hanging out together.
mhm,
And so if you're in
mhm,
that space of gratitude, then you can create, you can manifest. And I also feel like the universe is also kind and that the person who missed their flight, that there's also some reason that that was important for them too.
mm,
I mean, we don't know that person, so we can't follow up, but that's been my experience. It's every difficulty creates new opportunities. Maybe for them, they got a couple extra days on the beach and they really wanted to not go home yet. And so it's like, oh, I actually cannot go home yet. So that's all
mhm.
right. They're staying till Monday.
Right, right, right. And just to expand on, I think when doing affirmations, like I had said, that I feel it's important not to try to figure out the how. Like,
Mm,
say, if the
mhm.
affirmation is around money, if you're
Yeah.
feeling lack and you want to feel prosperous, and you can say whatever affirmations resonate in regards to I'm abundant, I have a lot of money, I have this amount of money in my bank account. I think instinctively we go to, well, how? How is that going to happen? How am I going to make this happen? And most times it's like, I don't know how this is going to happen. And that brings you right back to the lack. And this is never going to happen for me. And this doesn't work. And so so they can be very tricky affirmations. We
Yeah.
have to
Yeah.
suspend disbelief.
Mhm.
And again, being really hung up on the how. How is it going to happen? Because
Mhm.
with that flight, there's no way I would have thought of that someone
Yeah.
would have lost their passport.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And
it's,
if you
yeah,
had, it would have bounced back and you would have lost yours.
exactly, because that would have been my focus.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
And yeah, the how is the universe's job, and we don't need to manage the universe. It's doing just fine. Thank you very much. And we don't have to be bossy pants for, directing. It's like, give me what I want, give it to me right now. That generally doesn't work either. But being in a state of openness and curiosity and surrender. The other thing that's kind of cool with affirmations is that if it doesn't work to change anything in the physical, that's okay. The only side effect of it is, that you're going to feel better about yourself. And for me, that's like the whole point of doing it is feeling better about yourself makes your experience better. So even if the pain doesn't go away, even if the problem doesn't resolve, you will be in a better space because, we don't have an option about pain. Pain is pain. There you go. We do have an option about suffering or the mental pain we put ourselves in that we can counteract. So we might still have to deal with the situation or the issue. Thinking it away doesn't solve the problem or make things happen. But if you're in a positive mindset, then your action becomes lighter and easier and possible. It puts you in the energy of solution. So you're more likely to take positive steps rather than being just in the grips of fear. It also makes you more open to, other people's suggestions or ideas and the downsides are, oh, you're going to rest in gratitude and you're going to feel slightly better than when you started. So yeah, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Angela. It's
Mm,
been awesome having you here. Thank you, everybody. And we'd love to hear how this all sits with you. So please drop us a line at lunaholistic.com/podcast. You can leave a comment on our website, and we'd love to know, like, how does this all work for you? What do you find? Do affirmations work for you? It's okay if they don't, but if they do, I'd love to hear those stories and in how you use affirmations. What affirmations do you find the most beneficial? I'm endlessly fascinated by all this stuff. But yeah, thank you.
mhm.
Thanks, Angela.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Okay, bye-bye, everybody. Thank you for joining us on the Luna Holistic podcast. We're so grateful that you are here. If you've got a question, we'd love to hear from you. Go to lunaholistic.com/podcast and we'll answer you in an upcoming episode. Be sure to subscribe to our show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And also please rate, because you never know where your little 5 stars will go to shine light into somebody's heart today. So thank you very much, and we'll see you next time.